So, my name is Michael Gizzi. I am a professor of criminal justice at Illinois State University in Normal, Illinois. We are hardly normal. I am approximately 2.5 hours south of the windy city of Chicago and about 2.5 hours north of St. Louis. It is currently snowing outside, but we missed out on a major storm, so I'm fairly happy about that. I teach criminal justice. I do research in the areas of American constitutional law, but I'm trained as a political scientist. And I'm a professional trainer for MAXQDA. I do consultations and virtual workshops and someday actual face-to-face workshops again on a variety of tools. And I'm co-editor of a new book that is coming out hopefully in March. It's looking real good for March. The Art of Data Analysis, 10 Research Examples with MAXQDA. You're going to love it. We brought together a wide range of accomplished MAXQDA users to provide you with individual case studies of specific tool usage and how we use MAXQDA. Dr. Stefan Rodeker and I are the co-editors of the book, and it is being published through MAXQDA Press. MAXQDA Press is the latest venture from Verbi, the company that provides you with MAXQDA, and it has free access to all of its publications, including the Art of Data Analysis, on the MAXQDA-press.com website. Several of the books are also available for print. Including the newest one on focused interview data analysis. You will be able to access my book in a few months. If you need to contact me, feel free to reach out at mgizzi@gmail.com for consulting or questions or whatever. Always glad to chat. So before we start, if you are not a member of the MAXQDA Research Network, the question is why? It's free. It provides access to resources, and you can join it by just simply going to maxqda.com/research-network. Check that out. And if you're brand new to MAXQDA and you don't have the software yet, feel free to hop over to maxqda.com/trial, and you can get a 31-day trial of MAXQDA software. If you're a student, there are great student prices as well. So make sure you have it. You do not need it today. This is a demonstration, and most of today will be demonstrating right from in MAXQDA. I'll use this PowerPoint for a few slides, but we're going to go live for the vast majority of today. So those are the end of the commercials, I believe. And what are we going to do today? Well, we're going to talk about paraphrasing. I'm going to try to clarify for you the differences between paraphrasing, memos, and comments. Some of you know this from last week, but it's always good to reinforce. Then we're going to talk about how to paraphrase text, images, and PDFs after we've talked about why you would paraphrase. And we will spend time talking about how to view your paraphrases using paraphrase segments, categorize paraphrases, the Paraphrasing Matrix. We will talk about the ways that you can use that data and how it can be valuable to you for a literature review or for coding data itself. We'll even show you how you could create a max map with paraphrases from a single document. And then when we're done, we will give you a sneak peek into next week about the summarizing coded data with the summary grid and table. So when you have questions, please ask them in the chat, and when it's the appropriate time in between what I'm doing, I will always answer them. I have the chat face on my right up here for you. So let's see, where do we begin? A sneak peek before we begin. Last year at MAXQDA's MQIC International Conference in Berlin, I presented a 30-minute session on paraphrasing. And if you look at the link that I just put into the chat, you can access the handout from that. That doesn't cover 100% of everything we're going to talk about, but it is a useful resource. So unfortunately, there is no MQIC this year because of the pandemic, but hopefully we'll be back in 2022. Oh, I can't wait to get back to Berlin. So paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is a tool in MAXQDA that lets you write brief, tweet length, 255 character summaries of segments of text. It's a very useful tool in creating a literature review, in exploring data, or in helping to develop a coding system when you are guided in creating your codes from your data as opposed to inductively, as opposed to where you're theory driven or a deductive model where you know what the codes are to start. Why do you paraphrase? Well, you paraphrase when you want to distill a document. You want to put it into your own words. A way of simply summarizing the content when you don't need to code. I'm going to show you an example in a little bit that's actually from the graduate class that I am teaching right now. And last week I had to read 3 articles because my students had to read those articles. And I imported those into MAXQDA and I used paraphrasing and the highlighting codes to break down the articles for myself. To prepare myself for teaching a 3-hour class. The options are really almost unlimited. And so you paraphrase for 2 reasons. When you want to use documents for purposes of a literature review, or primarily when you want to assist in building a code system. But I should reiterate it that using it when you first are looking at your data, when say you've got your interviews in and just when you're getting started, paraphrasing can be a really helpful way of synthesizing the type of information you have and then using that in a way to kind of organize your thoughts on how to move forward. Paraphrasing is one tool in MAXQDA. It's really important that we understand the differences of these tools. There are 4 different tools tied to writing in MAXQDA. This slide should look familiar from those who've been with me before. Let's distinguish between memos, paraphrases, and code comments first. And then summary tables we can chat at the end. A memo or a paraphrase is a summary of text or images or video that does not need coding. Useful for those reasons that I've described. A memo is where you write important analytical thoughts, take notes, raise questions, attach it to segments of document segments, to codes, to documents, or just have them free in the memo system. Memos have no length limitations. A memo can be as long as you want it to be. You can copy and paste things into memos, and they're fully searchable in MAXQDA. A coding comment is different in that it is tied to a specific segment that you've coded. So you've coded a block of text, and you can double click on the code name in the left sidebar, and you can add a 255 character comment that will only appear when you retrieve or look at that particular coded segment. It's really useful to annotate segments, to identify important segments, to add additional information depending on if you have a fairly generic code. and you want to be able to have a little bit more detail, the coding comment and the paraphrase tools look very similar in terms of the data entry process. They share the same engine. They share the same length. They share the fact that you can't search them in MAXQDA. They're tools that you use with other tools. Okay. Summary tables are an entirely different beast. They are a tool that you use when you've already coded data and you want to write brief summaries of your coded segments that you can then view tab in a table. It's a really useful way for analysis. Okay. Do those differences make sense? Again, I've said this many times. Think of MAXQDA as the tool you use to content analyze your data, but it really is an all-encompassing tool for research. But the key here, and I'm not going to go over all this. I actually thought I had hid this particular slide. Oh well. The key here is figuring out to know about when to use a paraphrase versus a comment. Talk about their similarities. I will do that when we're live because I'll show you both code comments and paraphrases, and I'll even create a memo so you can see all three of them at the exact same time. But the similarities of a code comment and a paraphrase is if you're coding from the beginning, you could use a code comment to write out a paraphrase of the coded segment if you wanted to. That would be completely doable. In some ways, it might be a very efficient way of getting to the end result of a summary table. But they're similar and they're different. Think about documents for longer pieces of information, about analytical thoughts, about keeping track of your project. Think about paraphrases for initial exploration and literature review building. And there are a lot of different ways that people use paraphrasing for literature reviews. There are a lot of different ways people use MAXQDA for building literature reviews. Think about code comments as specifically tied to annotating one specific segment. And as I've said, the memos can be searched, nothing else can be. Memos don't have a length trigger, a limit. Paraphrases have specific uses. One last piece before we jump in. Paraphrasing and document summaries, the summary grid and table, are very similar in the sense that you are taking let's assume text, a block of text, and you're synthesizing it into your own words. The key difference is you can't use a document summary if you haven't already coded data. The paraphrasing is sort of, you can do it for anything you want, but you gotta make sure that when you're paraphrasing, really important to make sure that you should be paraphrasing. I have a colleague, I taught him paraphrasing. He got really excited about it. And then he just continued to paraphrase, and never actually began to code. There we go. Can you see MAXQDA on the screen? Yes. In fact, I know you can. So on your screen, you see a project. It's called the Cuomo Project. It is a project that I began, and I use this more for demo purposes right now, but it's a project interesting. It is a project focused on the leadership of New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo during the early part of the COVID pandemic, when Governor Cuomo gave daily press conferences that all of America became enamored with, and people watched these press conferences to learn about what was going on when we weren't getting other meaningful data from other places. I began collecting transcripts of the press conferences, but I also collected several pieces of literature on leadership. And so what you have here actually are 3 articles and a text document. I'm not certain why that's there. 2 articles that I've thrown in here for now. Moral leadership and overview in a text format, which is how I'm going to work with it. And so what you're seeing here, and moral leadership in a PDF version, which I'll also show you how to use both. So I have this document, and and you'll notice on the left there are some codes that got created through paraphrasing, and I'll explain that. And you're going to notice in the right sidebar, you're going to see these blocks of text. These blocks of text are actually paraphrasing. If I right-click on the sidebar, it says to show me memos and paraphrases. I can show memos and comments or memos and paraphrases. If I show comments, the paraphrases disappear. I'm hopeful eventually MAXQDA will allow you to see them all, maybe in a color-coded way to distinguish them. But right now, you have the choice of memos and paraphrases. It's in the right sidebar, which is accessed right here. So I can turn it off. So right now I have a document system, a coding system, and the document browser. I click this right here, and I have the paraphrases that I've created so far. My goal here is, in reading this article, I want to make better sense of the argument being made in this piece. Okay? So, how do I paraphrase? I go to analysis, which I am there. You'll notice right here, you see this paraphrase icon, and you see a little small icon with an arrow. If I click on the arrow, it shows me the 4 options that I have: paraphrase, categorize, matrix, and print document with paraphrases. Okay? I can click paraphrase document, and notice all of a sudden text began to turn green. The text that is green is text that has already been paraphrased. If I want to do something else in MAXQDA, you'll notice I can't. Oh, I can. Huh. That one I can get to. They've changed it, so you're not locked into it anymore. Cool. If I want to paraphrase a document, I can either do the bottom and select it like that, or I can just simply go to paraphrase right here and click it. Turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off. If I'm in paraphrase mode and go to another toolbar, paraphrases turn off automatically. So I want to paraphrase this text here. I turn paraphrase on, I highlight the text, and up pops a paraphrase dialog box. So I want to take this text and paraphrase it. When I'm done, I click OK. Now notice, it's right here. It's still blue because I haven't moved my mouse yet. The second I click here, somewhere else, it's now turned green. So I've paraphrased that text. Let me show you again. Here's a section. 5 rules of the 5 laws of power. highlight, pop it up, hour fills a vacuum. Now you'll notice all 5 of these sections here are paraphrased. They show up right here. Let me flip to the PDF version of this. And you'll notice here, let's see, I think it was already done. Here's the same paragraph in this graphic, which the whole thing was paraphrased as, the 5 laws of power. If I want to paraphrase in a PDF, I just need to, I have a couple options. One, I need to turn paraphrasing on. And I can go like this and highlight an area of an image. Okay. This is a test paraphrase. That's one way with an image based. I can also do this. If the PDF is text readable, select the text, release, and then type it in. So I'm showing you multiple ways of doing this. So let's pretend we'll switch projects briefly. I'm coming right back to this though. My Netflix project. Please tell me where I want to be. Yep. You'll notice here I have this graphic, and each of these windows has been paraphrased. If I want to paraphrase something like this, I don't know why that's already circled. Select it, the image. Oh, I've already done that. Never mind. It's not going to work. So I find another graphic. So this is literally a PowerPoint. Sometimes things don't go the way I want. Here we go. I'm going to delete it. I can select this, paraphrase, and so it's a graphic, but now I have it paraphrased. Okay? Let's go back. So we've got paraphrases. We've paraphrased it. Are you all fine with the ways that you do it? It's very simple. You turn paraphrase on, you select the text, you fill in your summary. That's it. So how do we view them? If there are no questions about that, I'm going to move forward. Cool. All right. How do we view our paraphrases? There's a couple of ways. Go back to this document. So I know the first way of viewing paraphrases is using the sidebar. So I've got the document here, and I've got the right sidebar. And I can literally read through my document and kind of look at the paraphrases that I've written. That's one useful tool. It's not the most useful, but it's there. I like it to see that if I was then to say this was a document that I paraphrased, not that now I want to code, actually seeing those paraphrases can be really helpful. Notice here though in my code system, you notice how I have a thing that says paraphrase segments, and it shows me that there are 36 of them. Double click. Ah, this looks an awful lot like, oh, I lost it, sorry. This looks an awful lot like a retrieved segment window. Indeed, if I were to double click this code, bring up the retrieved segment, the one code that's there for it, it would look exactly the same. MAXQDA is very good at replicating tools for usage. Notice here is the paraphrase. This is the document group, the name of the document, the beginning and end within the document, a weight score if you used it, and a preview of the text. I click it. This is the text. This is the paraphrase. I can sort, so I can see them all here and scroll through it. It's a potentially useful tool. I have these paraphrase segments. I also have the ability to code retrieved segments. If I want to code based on things here, but I'm going to show you a better way. I can use the smart coding tool. Not particularly helpful there. Paraphrase segments, leadership is about transformation. That's because I selected one document. Okay. Select them all, smart coding tool. It still gives me this thing. I'm going to skip that. Let me show you something else. I want to see my paraphrases. I can right click on this. I can activate documents I have paraphrased. I can create a memo for paraphrases. I can do that overview of document segments and documents, cross tab with variables, intersection with codes. Now, this project doesn't have any of that. So, a project that has a lot of paraphrases, has a lot of codes, has a lot of documents, 684 paraphrase segments. A lot, right? Right click. I can look at intersection with codes, and it will show me that my paragraphs intersect with all of these codes. And again, that's because we've already coded. I can right click and I can cross tab my data. So I can say I want words to be. This is one of my organizing tools. You don't need to understand it for now, but I want to only look at paraphrases where the Shepherd's variable is listed as followed. And it's going to show me I have 320 paraphrase segments there. I can click on those 320, and now in my retrieve segments, it's loading and loading and loading and loading, and they're all going to show up there. I have a lot of tools there, things that I can use there, but I think for purposes of of your use in learning paraphrasing. The real value is not here, but right here. Categorize paraphrases. Go back to the other project. Remember, I'm trying to create a literature review, and I want to make sense of this article on moral leadership and overview. Okay? Categorize paraphrases. Now you see something that's very interesting. I want to make sure I'm seeing everything. Yep. Okay. Categorize paraphrases actually lets me code my paraphrased text. So you'll notice here, we've got these documents. I'm going to actually quit this. I'm going to activate just this document, categorize paraphrases. I'm only viewing this activated document. I can turn that off and see everything, but so I've got these paraphrases here. Power fills a vacuum. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So in this instance, I am reading this to not just develop a literature review, but I actually want to develop some codes on moral leadership that I will use in other documents. You'll notice right here, there's some codes here that are created: ideological basis of power, institutional power. Power is responsible to power is a response to responsibilities and tasks. Power is personal. How on earth can I create a code? So before I do that, first off, say I'm looking at these paraphrases and I want to kind of reorganize them. I can just drag it, move it, if I want, so I can view it however I want. I can also select this. So power is always personal is the paraphrase. Here's the segmented text. I want to code I want some sort of a code about the idea of sort of some text which demonstrates, sort of the personal nature of things. So like I could see an example where Cuomo in this project is back in April, is referring to his brother who was sick with COVID. I can right click the paraphrase. Notice I right click codes and it did nothing. I right click the segment, I can do the same thing. Create and assign a new code. I could add a color if I want. I can even add a code memo if I want. I click OK. Now I have a code that I've created. You'll notice it shows up here. I'm going to move it so that it's under my 5 laws of power. Let me show you a little trick that I like. I'm going to double click. I want to code this, but I want to actually use the paraphrase as a code memo. Double click into paraphrase. Select. Command or Control C to copy. You notice when you're in here, you can edit your paraphrases too if you want, so you can add to it. Now, right click, create and assign a code. Not certain why I would need this code, but whatever. So just making this up. But notice with Code Memo, I can now Control or Command V to paste in my memo. So I now will have a code memo helping me understand why I created this code. That's extremely valuable. God, isn't it? Find one. So it doesn't really matter what it is. So remember the full process here. Say we really wanted to create a code about this. I'm going to double click here. I don't have to, but I like the idea of doing this. I think it's good practice. Copy. I can right click here, create and assign a new code. I will go to the code memo, pasting in the paraphrase into the code, leadership as social responsibility. So say I'm looking for examples that show leadership from Governor Cuomo as a form of social responsibility. I click OK. Now I have the code. I just did code the paraphrase. I code the paraphrase because I want to create a code system. Remember, I can create it from either here or here. It's the exact same thing. So it's just, and once I, in fact, say that there was a second code I wanted to create from this paraphrase. I can do that too. Right click, the exact same cell, create and assign new code. I'm just gonna make this up, code 2, blah, 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 blah. Now you'll notice I have two codes tied to this paraphrase. You'll also then look here to your code system. It always creates a code at the root level, so I don't know where I would put this for right now. I could organize it however I want. Can organize my codes in a meaningful way. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Can we save and share the paraphrases? Of course. So I sort of jumped in almost in reverse because I should have shown you the matrix of them first. But this tool, when you're done with it, what's that showing me? Display paraphrase segments. Okay, yeah. This lets you turn on the paraphrase segment so you see the full thing. I think that should always be on. This lets you create codes based on your paraphrases. But say I want to do something else. Say I'm not interested in coding. I want to do a literature review. Quit this. Now you'll notice here that I have my code memos that shows up with it. So it's really useful. Let's go to Paraphrase Matrix. Let's select a document. We can either insert this activated document or we could drag it here if we wanted to, but I don't want that here twice. And I click OK. Now, look what I have. A document that looks a lot like, it looks like a memo. It's a matrix of all the paraphrases for this document. I'll do this again. Paraphrase matrix. This time I will take this one. And this would show you the paraphrases from both of them in a table. So say you have two articles that you're trying to compare. This would be a way that you could do that. If you're specifically if you were specifically paraphrasing certain things. So say I had two documents and I'm only paraphrasing the section on methodology, and I want to better understand the methods used in these multiple studies. I could paraphrase the two, use the matrix, and look at them side by side. But let's kind of go back to this right here. I want to use this in a literature review. Couple things first. One, display the origin. Turn this on, and this will show me exactly where this particular paraphrase occurs. I click it, and look, I'm now right where that paraphrase was. I've got to see it. It's underneath there. Yep. Okay. My chat was hiding it. Where's my matrix? It's hidden. It's right here. MAXQDA shrunk it, so I'll just bring it back. Whoa. And here it's there. This can be very useful when you're wanting to make sure you can cite the right places in a document. But say I want to just get a better sense of this article. Right here, left icon, display origin, off, on. Make the text larger. Show how many columns I want. If I want to show one column at a time. I can search within this document. Trait showed up. I don't know why it went black like that, but it did. I can refresh the matrix just by going back to here. So I could add, so I only really want this one. So I'll get rid of it. Click OK, back to where I was. Say I want to be able to work with this in creating a literature review. Well, let's turn that off. I'm on a Mac, so it's Command A, but Control A. Highlight everything. Command Control C. Copy that text. I'm going to go to Moral Leadership right here. I'm going to right click and create a document memo for it. I'm going to Control Command V to paste. And now I have a memo with all my paraphrases in the order that they are in that I could use in writing a literature review. I can, in this same memo, if I want, I could continue to type and sort of use those paraphrases to kind of point out the major points of this article. Make sense? And once I have that document memo, of course, I can always go to Memos. I can view my document memos right here. And you'll see I've done this twice, actually. An overview. And I have my memo. Okay? You'll notice here, I can export this directly to Word, open this basic document as a Word document or as an Excel spreadsheet. But I kind of think it's almost just as easy just to copy and paste. And if I want to bring it into Word, well, I can do that. And I did. And it went on my other screen, which isn't really helpful. Hang on. I've got this whole multiple screen thing going on and it just didn't work the way I wanted it to. But I could open it in a Word document and paste it in there. Make sense? So the paraphrase matrix is also useful. This is the key tool for me in developing, using this to develop a literature review. One other tool. Paraphrase print document with paraphrases. I don't want this one. Hang on. Let's do this one. You'll notice here you have a document that looks like it has track changes in it, but instead what it has is the text in the document and then the paraphrase text, and you can control what percent of the paraphrase comments take. So you can limit that to, you can make it a little bit smaller like that, so 25%, and I can either have the highlighted segments turned on or off. Then click OK, and then it would bring up, it would print it. I'm not going to print it. But I could print it as a PDF too. Where is my print to PDF? Yep. Yes, this will get recorded. Just it's being recorded and will be shared eventually. Desktop. Oh, yeah, I've been having an Adobe issue. Let me do this in preview. It's nice and slow. So there you have your document with your paraphrases. Think about how useful this could be in terms of building your literature review. And because I have this paraphrase like this, watch. I'm going to drag that, oops, hang on. I'm going to drag that into my document system. Now I have a document with that has already been paraphrased. I don't know why I would want to do that, but particularly since this is now just a text that's a graphic. It's not actually a paraphrase for purposes of MAXQDA, but it's there. Those are the basic paraphrase print document with paraphrases. Notice it's not showing up there because this document doesn't have any paraphrases. This one, on the other hand, does, and print document paraphrases shows up. So basically, this is it for the tool. However, there's one other area where paraphrasing is useful. Let's go to Visual Tools. Let's go to Max Maps. Let's go to New Document Model, Paraphrases. It's going to get messy because there's too many paraphrases here, but drag this document in. Click OK. Now, I certainly could remove elements from the map, and I could end up creating a, I'm trying to see where the heck they are. Power fills a vacuum, power's personal. I could literally reduce it to these 5 elements. Let me show you this real quick. And so I could create a neat graphic, pretend those other lines weren't there, with just the the points that I'm interested in, and say this was the, you know, sort of the, rename it laws of power, and I could have a nice map. That's a neat little tool. I don't think for purposes of research I would necessarily use that much, but I could easily see it potentially in a presentation. Depends. You might see a real useful use with it. Let's also point out one other thing. Notice here, remember we've added in those codes? When we added in those codes, those segments then got coded. So power is always personal right here is also tied to personal example. And the comments in it are actually tied to the exact, there's a comment that was created with it. So a code comment. I could right click and show comments, and so now I will see those because I've actually coded that text. And if you remember, I coded this text twice, and so both of them there. I didn't even realize that, but it automatically created a code comment for that one particular segment. So let me show you something totally different. I'm going to show a different project. I'm going to end with this. I said sometimes you want to summarize materials that you have coded. 7 days. 7 days ago, I opened it when we did the last webinar. This is a study of wrongful conviction cases. I've coded data on police misconduct. Actually, a student did. I want to activate documents by police misconduct. And I want to summarize my coded data. Analysis, summary grid. These are all the cases that involve police misconduct where people were wrongfully convicted of a crime. These are my codes. And these little cells with blue and green tell me that I have a coded segment and a document summary. So I click on this blue cell. This is next week. This is next week. This is called the summary grid, and next week we will spend an hour on it. I click on it. I read the comment. I read the coded segment. I summarize it. It turns green. So violence, threat of violence. This is the one I like to use all the time. Each one, notice here, a lot of text, right? 2 different things that were coded, there were coded segments tied to this. There's even a memo, although I think it's a fake memo that I did for this. But yeah, so much going on here. I then reduce this to this amount of text. I make sure I go through the entire thing. Every cell where there's blue is green, except these 2 here. And when I'm done, I go to the summary tables. And I create a new summary table, and I select codes and variables, and I'm going to show you that all next week. And here is a summary table, all the cases and all of the examples of violence or threat of violence. The best example of this, though, is right here. An overall table. Here is each individual. Here are all of my codes: violence, mishandling, witnesses, eyewitnesses, withholding evidence, coercing false confessions. Notice here, for each individual here, we've reduced all these coded segments into very concise pieces of info. And that can only be done when you have coded data, and that we will go over in great depth next week. Let's see what I'm missing here. How many documents are used here in this one? This one was 59. There were 59 cases that had police misconduct. It's a historical data set of exonerations that occurred, that are recorded in the U.S. before 1992. The full data set involves over 2,000 cases. Have a great day, folks. Stay safe out there, and I look forward to seeing you next week. I love the summary table. It's a great tool. So.